Hey there, welcome back to another Rest Eat Move podcast. It's Matt and Chris in the studio. Today we're going to talk about how does this happen? We're going to talk about how do you get to a place where you say, man, how am I on all these medications? Or how do I not feel the way that I used to? Or I can't sleep, or I've lost my energy, and everything that it encompasses. So how does this happen? But before we begin, I just want to mention we'll be running our largest sale of the year, our November sale, starting November 25th. So pay attention to that. You'll get emails and a bunch of information coming. We'll have our biggest sale of the year. So you want to hit that if you can. But when you talk about how does this happen, a lot of things trigger this conversation over and over again as we talk to people, coach people, speak. I told you the other day, I'm coming home from an event and it's like the Q&A questions are so popular, but they're becoming so complex. It used to be, "Hey Matt, my spouse isn't sleeping. Is there any recommendations to improve sleep?" And you tell them, "Okay, let's get magnesium and do this." Now it's my spouse can't sleep, has sleep apnea, snores, on acid reflux, and then wakes up and is tired and taking a medication and then can't get up, and it just goes on and on and on. And so you start to, it's not funny, but it's becoming very common. How does this happen? How do you go on 5 medications? How do you start sleeping 3 hours only a night? How do you gain 50 pounds and you can't even move your body like you once could? So that's what we're talking about today. What's your thoughts? How do we get here? How does this happen?
If you just go back in time, eh, I think you and I always like it when you do a presentation because you pick up the phone, you want to talk to me because you're all jacked up. And then you're talking about the questions and which is exciting. It's exciting for you. It's exciting for the audience. But as like when we do events now and we have a ample time to do Q&A, the Q&A just continues to flow because people are struggling and they don't really have the answers. They don't really understand what questions to ask. So the big thing, if you just go back in time, is like how how does this happen? Well, it begins with lack of self awareness. So I'm not getting. I don't. I don't really know what I don't know. I don't know my blood pressures. You did a podcast last week on energy. Are people really feeling their best? Are they? The list goes on. So it all begins with lack of knowledge and lack of self awareness. And then if you looked at the medical world, you guys have heard this before, but we're only 2 countries in the world that do advertising for pharmaceuticals on TV. And New Zealand, which is the other one, doesn't advertise the way we do. They advertise from an educational standpoint. So we're the only country in the world that markets. So you can imagine, I worked for Dr. Barry Saltman way back in the late 80s. Very amazing primary care doctor, but seeing 45 patients a day. So you can imagine when you're coming into all these broken problems, how you're going to fix them. And many times they're not going to be compliant anyway, so you're going to walk out with these medications, and that's how it all begins.
Yeah, and I don't I've watched these commercials. These commercials are so lame. I don't think anyone just, but it's creates this, oh, maybe I have this, and it's in your brain, and then the doctor says it and it becomes very normal. 89% of people over the age of 50 are medicated.
90%.
4 out of 10 are taking 5 or more medications, and 2 out of 10, 20% are taking 10 plus medications over the age of 50. So how does this happen? I have a client I'm working with, and he came to see me. He saw me speak. I hit a couple nerves. He's on 6 medications, 4 of them for blood pressure alone. He's on Wegovy, which is for weight loss, but it could be a type 2 diabetes drug. And then he's on a statin medication, also taking a daily baby aspirin and a couple of supplements that are recommended. At 50, mid 50s, how did this happen? 7 years ago, he's on no medications. I think the one thing that we have to realize, though, and this headline kind of catches people's attention, but this isn't how we got here. 70 years ago, 0 medications. Today, 6 medications. It didn't really work that way. So talk to the listeners about the body's always talking to us. And so you can do anything you want pretty much till you're 40. Almost probably
Kinda.
till you're 50.
Yeah.
But there's things that are happening.
Oh,
So
sure.
it doesn't just go like that where you're
No.
on now 6 medications.
You know, I used to tease the audience. I'm like, we ask questions and they ask me this and that. And I said, I don't understand what hit me. I go, yeah, you eat a honey bun and drink a Mountain Dew for breakfast. What are you talking about? You've been doing that for 30 years. Of course. It's the Chinese bamboo tree. It's grown underground for 4 to 5 years before it comes out of the ground. So these things are all percolating, but we're not. And again, a lot of them, we're not even aware, like blood pressure. People, how would you not know what your blood pressure is when you're 20 years old or 25 or 30? How do you not know your resting heart rate? How do you not know your testosterone? I talk a lot about this. If I could go back in time, you asked me a long time ago, what would you know? I want to know what my testosterone level was when I was 20, 30, 40, 50. So you have some baselines.
Yeah, I think that's so good.
You look at your, I asked a guy yesterday, he weighs 281. 281. He's 5'11". I said, what do you want to weigh? He goes, I don't weigh 170. How did you get to 281? How did you, and we had a nice conversation about it. He goes, but it was 5 pounds a year. 5 pounds a year every year. And then it was 10 pounds a year. And the next thing you know, I'm 281. So what makes you now stand up and say, wait, enough's enough. I'm 281. I don't want to be 281 anymore. I want to be 170. Let's just start back and say, let's get to 250.
So I got a lot of things that as we get going, we have this topic we pick and you think, okay, this is going to be 20, 30 minutes. And it's, oh boy, you just hit a couple things that woke me up this morning. I'm talking to this gentleman. He's a great guy, funny, great to work with, wants to improve. But there's so many things that I have to peel back the onion. So I ask how you're sleeping. I sleep great. But my butt, not his butt, but you're using a CPAP machine. You're not sleeping great. You're using a device to help you sleep, and you just happen to stay asleep. If we looked at the brain waves and the circadian rhythm and all your sleep cycles they're not what they optimally could be. You're on a device
Right.
to keep you asleep.
Yeah.
And really what it's doing is it's allowing those airways so you're not snoring and waking yourself up.
And it can be a great tool.
Can be a great tool, but at what age? I'm 38 years old. I have 5+ friends that are younger than me that require a CPAP machine. That's not normal. It's becoming very common.
Yeah, I like that. It's very common, but it's not normal.
No, it's not normal. Think about if you were a caveman, cavewoman. You don't have electricity. How are you going to sleep without that thing plugged in? And it's not comfortable. It's not. But at the end of the day, so what are you going to do? How did we get here? Sometimes you do this more than I do it because you're becoming older and maybe less patient. You just want to help people. But when you look at someone, I almost could guarantee that if you are on a CPAP machine, you're overweight. I don't know what the percentage is, but pretty likely.
Yep.
And so you think, I sleep good. I'm not really necessarily sure that's a tool, but if you lost weight the right way, what if you didn't need that?
But again, I like you said, this is how does it all begin? It really, if you really step back for a second, there's a lot of stuff coming out right now past election is that medical literacy is getting worse. It's not getting better. People just don't understand it. They don't understand Ozempic. They don't understand
more information,
Wegovy.
but the literacy piece.
They don't have a clue.
Comprehension.
Yeah, so when I ask these questions, and when you ask them, it really hits a nerve. It wakes them up. So I'll ask them, how many breaths do you take per minute? Nobody knows. What's your resting heart rate? Have no clue. What's your resting blood pressure? What's your homocysteine? What's your CRP? What's your testosterone? my point is they don't know, and then they mask it.
Well,
I got
here's an
psoriasis or
here's
gut
an
health.
interesting perspective on that. They don't know some of the things. It's like, how does the car engine work? They don't know any of that. But they know to ask, does it have automatic locks? Should I take collagen? Should I take peptides? Or I am taking peptides, or I'm taking testosterone supplements, no problem. They don't know behind the hood of what it actually does, or actually how to listen to the body, but they know there's so much information creates this buzz,
Right.
but they really don't know how it works. And so then it's like working really
So
hard.
so you're hitting it right on the head. So when I wrote the book, Rest, Eat, Move, your health begins in your mind. And you have to have curiosity, and you have to tackle people's beliefs. And this is how we do our presentations, but that's really where it begins. Okay, I got a curiosity. What's going on here? But then, for example, you have somebody on 3, 4 blood pressure medications. I step back for a second, but they've never been taught this. What is blood pressure? How does it work? What is systolic? What's diastolic? How does the heart work? That's the first thing. Then the next thing I share with them is how the blood pressure medications work in the body. A calcium channel blocker blocks calcium. Calcium helps the vessels contract. So now you're taking to something that's, what if you took magnesium? Magnesium helps the body relax. Or an angiotensin drug, or a beta blocker, beta receptors, doesn't allow your body to do anything.
Or blood thinner, whatever
Right. So if you help them understand what that medication is and does, and then you have another option over here, then you have to determine, are you willing to change your lifestyle to go over here and do the work? Because the doctor's behalf, it's not fair to the doctors to come in with all these problems and think they're going to get fixed in 12 minutes. You're talking about somebody right now in their mid-50s on 6 meds. You're kind of scratching your head. What do I do here? Well, the first thing you do is we got to develop a plan for your lifestyle. And then we're not changing the meds, but then you say, okay, these are the 3 questions I want to ask your doctor, and this is the medication you're going after. So for that person, the first thing we're going to target is we're going to get off that blood thinner, which is that baby aspirin.
We're going to get off the Wegovy.
Again, the Wegovy is killing the gut health, right? So if Wegovy is one of them,
decrease magnesium.
It's going to you're going to mess up your sleep. You're going to mess up this. I had the gentleman I was telling you about, 281, doesn't sleep, and I said, and he's got all this stuff in his gut, and I said, he's taking a peptide, he's doing all these things. You're creating the environment of the gut's changing, and in the gut makes serotonin, which is the raw material that makes melatonin. And you can see how this starts to roll. If you look at all these mental health medications, trazodone, which is targeting anxiety, which again, people are using it for sleep now. It's killing that. It's understanding how does it work with serotonin. So again, you don't need to know exactly what's going on inside the engine, but when people start to understand and you're connecting the dots, they're like, wow. And so it's not fair to your doctor to have these issues because, number one, they're not trained in that space many times. Number two, they don't have the time.
So let's just start. We're 18 years old. We leave the house. Man, woman, doesn't matter. Leave the house, 18, go to college. You're drinking, you're partying, you're learning how to cook, you're learning how to dabble, some good habits, some bad habits. And then you get in your 20s and you're trying to build a career and maybe start a family, move into your first house. And then the 30s, and we talk about that late 20s, the 30s. This is the lifestyle you're going to have for the rest of your life. What are we seeing? If you could take this 55-year-old that's on 6 medications, what would we have changed from 28 to 40 that would allow them to maybe have more self-awareness, a better lifestyle, and potentially have less of these symptoms that lead to these symptomatic medications?
The first thing we'd have to teach them is basic self-awareness tools. And why do we not teach that? That's a big issue. Like, number one, I always step back and say, how do you breathe? How do you sleep? How do you handle, what do you believe stress is? So then from there we go into, are you doing basics?
And we've all been there in our 20 when we're 25.
Absolutely.
It's first job. We think, man, this is the most stressful time. And then you realize this is nothing but the habits you develop
correct,
in that time where you think this is the world's going to end. become harder. And so you develop these habits, because all we are is a bunch of habits. And then next thing you know, 35, and we actually have some stress. Got kids, you got responsibilities, and oh shoot, I didn't develop any habits. And next thing, oh boy, I'm snoring. I'm not sleeping.
Mhm.
My glucose is off the charts. My cholesterol is elevated.
I always ask my clients, when did you start getting up at 4 a.m. and you're going to bed at 11? When did that begin? Because you have 3 kids. Kristen has 3 kids. You don't put your kids to bed at 11, get up at 4. They do once in a while, but that's not. That's how it begins. When does it begin that you don't drink water anymore and you just drink coffee? When does it begin that you don't eat breakfast anymore and you're missing B vitamins, or the list goes on and on? So these are all little habits. If I always think sometimes, imagine you stepping into somebody's body for a day, how that would feel. But you have the same mental capacity. It's like you, but you're stepping into somebody else's body. And I've always fascinated by that.
Plenty of movies you can watch.
What would that feel like? Like, they're not feeding me. They don't move my body. I'm not sleeping enough. I'd be a mess. So that's the challenge we face.
Yeah. So take this case study, and we have many case studies. This is one that's just fresh, and it's scratching my head, and I'm scratching my head because we've talked about this for the last year. Ozempic and Wegovy are the most shiny tools in the toolbox right now. You're going to lose. If you have pounds to lose, you're going to lose 20, 30 pounds like it just melted away when the sun came out. But I scratch my head and think, man, this person here wants to feel amazing. That's why they started this journey. And for men specifically, most men don't get physicals. They don't usually go to the doctor until things start to literally hang off the body. Like, it has to be broken. That's why I talked about 20s and 30s.
Yep.
But then you get to this point and you're thinking, how does someone go on all these medications? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician. I'm not a cardiovascular surgeon. But I can look at this, and I can teach this to a high school student. I'd probably teach this to a middle school student, and just look at the numbers and say, this person is not thriving. And yet their doctor, it's not their responsibility to talk about thriving. Their responsibility is to talk about surviving. And that's going to be the issue, because when you look at the cholesterol, for example, it's too low. We know that we're going to have a laundry list of side effects from that level of cholesterol. Again, asking a better question, what is cholesterol? It's one of the most amazing molecules that the body naturally produces. It makes the cell integrity of every cell. It makes coenzyme Q10, which is the most powerful antioxidant. This person's on a statin medication, not taking coenzyme Q10. That's a ticking time bomb. Homocysteine is probably going to be off the charts high, but it hasn't been tested. So as I go down this path, I look at this just from common sense and say, yikes. I don't even have to see the medications. And then you look at the medications, you say, were the right conversations being had when you put somebody on 4 blood pressure medications? Did you tell them that you have high blood pressure not because you eat too much salt? Not necessarily probably because you're overweight. It's that your nervous system and stress is off the charts. Did we have that conversation?
No.
It's not going to be had.
No. So you're not going to have these conversations.
Because me and you both know a lot of cardiovascular surgeons, heart surgeons. They're some of the most stressed surgeons in the hospital. They're not going to talk about something that they are a little bit blind to. It's just the nature of human beings. You talk about things that you're more aware of.
Again, it's a dialogue. I always wonder sometimes if I came in and I'm talking to whatever financial advisor, tell me your practices. That's rarely do we get that
transparency when it comes to medicine.
Very rarely do I have people ask me.
It's too private. It's too private.
You're 67 years old next week. What do you do? I never get that question. What's your day look like? I'm not saying that good, bad, or indifferent, but my point is that if you're sitting down with people, they're not gonna go down that path. And so next thing, I'm on these medications, and the person in the sitting there, the patient's sitting on their hands. They're not asking questions.
They might even be on their phone multitasking, just
They might
waiting
be.
for
So the doctor's in behalf is, if the person's sitting on their hands, I don't know if they're going to be compliant or not. That's the door number 1, 2, and 3. Let's make a deal. Do you want to go down door number 1? If I was in this space and I'm sitting down, and I do this with my clients, this door right here, you do exactly what you're doing. You don't really need to come back and see me, because it doesn't seem like you're interested in deciding to make that move.
We see a lot of people like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've seen people in the last few weeks. Like, you're not coming back because I'm not going to work harder than you are, and obviously I'm going to have to work harder than you. Number 2 is
That's a good point. So we talk about this. A lot of clients come in and we want it more than they want it.
I tell them, if you follow what I'm telling you to do, this is what you can. This is the outcome you can expect. If you continue this path, you will have these issues down the road, like the gentleman you're talking about. If he follows that path in his mid-50s, he's going to have a lot of problems.
That's why
in
he
his
reached out.
mid-60s.
He's already seen him.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, that conversation wasn't had when you're 35 or 45. Because again, life gets in the way. I get that,
and it's no one's
somebody's fault.
It's not the doctor's fault. If you don't go to the doctor at 35, it's not the doctor's fault.
It's not the doctor's fault.
And at 35, I'm not going to even blame you, because most of our society has not been taught.
I think the other thing too, people listen to this, is you want to develop a team and create a team. So I would recommend getting a massage therapist. You have a primary care doctor. You need to develop a team, maybe a coach. So that, because again, not everybody's going to be skilled in all different areas. You have that coach. You might even have, again, back to a financial advisor. You need to I think most people need a financial advisor. So you need these coaches around you to help you create this awareness and ask these questions and be curious. And the list goes on. So I don't go down that path. But if I do go down this path, if you're down that path today, here to tell you that the body has amazing ability to heal and self-correct. You can come back. So that guy, mid-50s, if he's willing to go down this journey and work really hard, and you work hard with them, they can definitely clean this thing up.
Yeah, and again, sometimes you have to fire the doctor. Sometimes you have to ask better questions. Sometimes you have to make sure that you got the right partnership there. If a doctor is just their toolbox is medications, and again, one just disclaimer, what we're talking about today is symptomatic medications. And sure, it's going to reduce risk for some people. That's all they're trying to do. They're trying to reduce risk, reduce liability. It's a money thing. It's a health thing. It's all those things. But again, medicine is very about survival. It's very one-dimensional.
Yeah, and again, for many people, medications fit a role. They fit a need. They fit a role. Again, but the goal is what you're talking about right now. These are lifestyle medications. Lifestyle. Medications can have
they're symptomatic.
That's exactly right. So what my lifestyle needs to change if I willing to. And so what I always say to my clients, you say to your clients, I don't want you changing anything. We're not jumping off any meds. We're going to teach you how to work with your doctor. If your doctor's not on board, not the team, we need to get a new doctor. I need to coach you on what to ask. Because if you walk in and like I always ask my clients, when you come in to see me, you need to come in with your 3 questions every time you walk in the door. Every time you walk in the door.
Same with a financial advisor,
That's right.
A trainer, or
That's right.
A team meeting, a workplace.
Absolutely. So get curious, come in. This is what I want to work on today. So you want to be more proactive on what you want. But again, most people don't. They walk in, it's the doctor, it's whoever. I'm going to let them guide the session. No, what do you really want?
Let me take you through the journey here. Again, I'm protecting who this person is, cholesterol is super low.
So first thing you showed me today is you showed me that, right?
Yeah.
And what's the first thing I said?
Cholesterol's too low.
Cholesterol's too low. And why do I say that?
Because cholesterol is a backbone to hormones. It
right.
really makes life. It makes you thrive.
So if I saw that cholesterol level low, that's the first thing. Keep going.
So hold on. So also the dates matter. So if you had your cholesterol checked 5 years ago, 6 months ago, we pay attention to those
right.
things. Cholesterol was checked this year. So I'm looking through these numbers. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician, but I'm very...
But you know all this stuff.
I know all this stuff. But then I look at the testosterone. Testosterone wasn't checked. It was checked 4 years ago. And at the time it was 440, which is, I would say, okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
Not for that age group, but
Not for that age and for
it,
what
it
he's
would be it would be surviving, not thriving.
And I said, I'm not a crystal ball reader, but you're going to go get your cholesterol or your testosterone checked and it will be a lot lower.
A lot lower at 116.
So it tells us, so we look at these things and we don't predict the future, but we know what's going to happen.
You can predict it. What's good? If you have a cholesterol level 116, you will have a low testosterone for sure.
If you're taking a statin medication, you'll have low cholesterol. You take a statin medication, you'll eventually have low testosterone. You take a statin medication, you'll struggle with sleep. You're going to struggle with thriving. You're going to struggle with memory. You're going to struggle with muscle aches. So we have to ask a better question. Here's the most interesting thing, and I stole this from someone. I have no idea. Many people, it's just common knowledge. We have better, quotation marks, medications and information and technology than ever before. And yet, currently in this moment, today, as you're listening to this, we have higher levels of every disease, health marker than ever before in the history of humans. Cholesterol levels have never been more out of balance. There's never been more medications taken.
Type 2 diabetes.
Obesity has never been worse, and that there's more
anxiety,
people.
mental health, sleep. Yep.
So none of these medications solve the problem.
Correct.
And so that's what again, if you're going to say, how did we get here? We're not thinking about prevention. We're thinking about, let's put the Band-Aid. I don't do much construction around my house. I'd rather hire someone that knows what
your
they're
toolbox
doing.
is your
But if I have a water pipe leak and I have no one to call, I probably would find some duct tape and try to do it that way. Yet there's probably a better way, and then there's probably a way to solve the problem in the future. But my brain just doesn't work that way. And I can see how humans, when it comes to their health, they just want to put their hands up and say, I just don't think that way. Unfortunately, you don't have a choice if you want a different outcome when it comes to your health. We are our only health advocate. And so I can call someone to fix my house and trade money for time. You can't really trade money for your health. You have to actually do the work. There's no other way around it. You got to control what goes in your mouth. You got to control your activity.
Well, I think that's why you need a team. Because if you have a team, again, you don't have to have them overnight, but you need a couple people in your corner that can help be your advocates on some of this stuff.
And might push on you a little bit.
It might push on you. Yeah, I pushed on. I was pushing hard yesterday with a few of my clients. I'm asking all these questions, and they're like, there's crickets. You're not doing the homework. I'm doing the heavy lifting. You're not.
Or we see someone that says, hey, I'm doing everything, but the doctor just says things aren't working. And you're like, no, you're not doing everything.
No, you're not.
Yeah, because I look at this one number, glycerides, and they're elevated. That means that you're either drinking too much alcohol, you like sweets.
And like you said on that, there's no homocysteine. There's no highly sensitive CRP. What's your GFR?
No GFR.
No GFR. Resting heart rate's at what, 75?
Heart rate is 75. Taking a bunch of medications.
So we always talk about the big three. Like so if anybody's not familiar with this, but we have a Know Your Number handout on our downloads on our website. But one of the things we look at the big three, that's your breaths per minute, resting heart rate, blood pressure. If those are in good shape, probably going to be getting pretty healthy.
Except if you're on 6 medications.
That's the other thing. So as soon as we see the medication, as soon as I saw that number, I knew that person was medicated.
So let me take us on a journey here. So how do I try to coach this person? Number one, you're going to work with your doctor. You're not going to get off any of these medications.
Correct.
Maybe even before that, though, we got to change some lifestyle. So 1 or 2, however you want to look at it, we're not going to change anything, but you got to start changing what you're putting in your body, how you're moving your body, are you controlling your stress? But from a medication standpoint, the 2 things that really I'm really pushing him on. Number 1, talk to your doctor. We got to get you off Wegovy. Here's why. He's got no appetite. Food doesn't even taste good. He's not eating enough calories, really, which means he's not getting enough nutrients. And it's causing havoc on his digestive health, which leads to
all sorts of problems.
So we're going to really work on that because that is not a required thing. He's taking that to lose weight. And we're going to lose weight a different way.
So that's your first one you're going to target.
The first one I'm going to target is you got to get off this baby aspirin because it's the same thing.
Right.
So you're on 4 medications that help with blood pressure, and on top of that, you're going to take a baby aspirin that wreaks havoc with digestive health. So we're going to get them on some omega-3s. We're going to get them doing some superfoods, Got to start eating breakfast, got to start eating lunch, can't go with huge gaps. There's these changes. But the other takeaway is we're also not going to do anything right now. We're not going to get off any of these. We're going to talk to the doctor. The first question you're going to ask the doctor is, Doctor, I want to get off these medications. What do I need to do? Put it in their court that you want a different outcome. And if they come back, it's not possible, then we got to look for another team, another coach, another part of the team.
Well, and the other thing too, I'll help them a little bit more. Like I like exactly the format you're saying, but I'll say, okay, the goal you're saying right now is we need to know what your risk is. So you need to know your risk. Once you understand your risk, how do we know, why will you put on a statin med when you don't even know what your homocysteine and CRP is? So first thing you have to understand is what your risk is. So let's get all these numbers, compare apples to apples. Do you have the new testosterone?
Yeah, it's 330.
330.
Went down 100 points.
100 points.
3 years.
So I don't know if people would be so curious or so anxious to take some of these meds if they knew this is the...
But before we got on, I talked about diabetes. How is there so many type 2 diabetics? I don't think people realize what will happen in 20, 30 years. It's the whole thing of why people don't save money. It's the whole thing of why we do the easy thing first versus the hard, because it will become easier later.
Yeah.
I've said this over and over, and the reason I had the energy podcast is I just see people trying to take the easy option to get this quick energy, and then it leads to chronic fatigue.
Yeah, if you have type 2 diabetes today, you're going to get Ozempic or metformin or Wegovy.
And you will have dementia.
And you will have all sorts of other issues coming down the path.
Which type 3 diabetes, we now call it, is when your eyes and your brain
Yeah, it gets back to the finest vessels in your body. It's going to be in your kidneys and your feet and your brain. So again, it gets back to the initial thing is, what am I willing to do? How do I change this? And you don't have to change anything.
So I'm going to ask the audience right now, send me an email. How many of you actually care just about what your cholesterol is? I don't think anyone cares because I don't think we really know what it does. Me and you, when we go get our cholesterol, it's almost a little competition. It's like, how good can I get my ratios with the highest possible cholesterol? That's really what we're trying to do. It's not about the level of cholesterol. It's about the ratios. And if the ratios are great and your level's high, that means you're thriving.
Right.
My ratios could also be good with low cholesterol. I still don't have the raw goods.
Right. Raw goods.
And so I think we've gotten to this place where I think a lot of people are walking around with poor energy, overweight, and it becomes common to feel bad, yet it's not normal.
Well, I had a client in yesterday morning, and I love this guy. And one of the things we were talking about is cholesterol for that. And he never heard me talk about this before, but you want your cholesterol level to be higher and balanced because it makes testosterone. It's the goods, right?
It's goods.
And I said, so when
it's the best of the goods.
Yeah. So when you're getting your blood test, you're looking for a high cholesterol and high. And if I see those numbers high, then I know your testosterone levels is going to be pretty good. Now, if you're not sleeping, you're not whatever, that could affect all
your
that.
Oxidation's off the charts. Now we got risk.
Right, we got risk. So that's where people say all the time is like cholesterol. Cholesterol's not the issue. It's the oxidation and inflammation and the cholesterol being out of balance.
And so challenge me. I have yet to see someone come in with that's not medications. Screw these numbers. So let's just say no medications. You come in, your cholesterol, let's just call it, throw out an even number, 250. With ratios great, testosterone high, homocysteine low, and high sensitive CRP low. That's what we're looking for, but I don't see it. And so when the doctor says, well, if you're elevated cholesterol is a risk factor, no, it's a risk factor if other aspects are off the chains. Because when my wife had I talk about this, when she has a cholesterol of 260 and it went up 80 points during the first 3 months of pregnancy, they're not worried about a heart attack.
Nope.
Because everything else is in line. But what is
you're
cholesterol
making a new
doing?
Life.
And the last thing is cholesterol, whatever it is right in this moment is what it's meant to be. And so once we start, it's like that game where you start to butterfly effect. You hit this over here, but it causes a ripple effect over here.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing. And so today wasn't about everything we're going to do with this person, I can go down the list. This is going to take 6 months, a
The
year.
good news for that person that now they're
self-aware.
curious. And so now that's where it begins, the curiosity. Then from there, you say, okay, what's the first 2 or 3 steps we can take and don't get overwhelmed?
And I'll say this, today we focused on medications a little bit because I think medications start to wake people up. But how does this happen? How do we not be able to get on the floor?
I
How
the
do we
other
stop doing pull-ups?
Yeah, I think that's, again, back to self-awareness. That's not just in medications. It's not just on your blood work. It's all the other stuff. Like you said, CPAP, sleeping. That could be a beneficial tool, but you got to ask the question, why am I not sleeping anymore? But I see a lot of my clients, and not that they feel everything's okay because their numbers are great. And their numbers are great because they're heavily medicated. And so they think, well, it's good. I'm like, it's not good. You have a really good example there of a testosterone level of 440 before, and now it's at 300 after the medication. So that's
if you weren't checking all these numbers in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you have
You
no
wouldn't know.
idea what
You
the
have no
body
idea.
was really meant to be.
right.
So when you look at and you compare it to, this is where we're becoming an issue when you start to compare averages. So how numbers work, when you look at norms, how they work is they look around and they say, what's the average of people that didn't have an incident? But that's not really what most people are trying to go after.
Right.
And so here's the craziest stat. 70% of heart attacks happen with normal cholesterol. That should just slam the door shut that statins are not the first arm of defense.
The other thing too, my nieces and nephews, I had a conversation with their doctor, and they're in a position at this time. They were going from teenage years to adult years, and so I got on the phone and I was talking to this woman doctor, and she was awesome. And I said, she was calling me about, because I told them to get their testosterone level checked, and they were like, "Why do you need your testosterone level checked?" I said, because they're 20, and so when they're 20, they can compare it when they're 30 and then 40. And she said, I never thought of it that way.
Because we're just worried about, again, most 20-year-olds are thriving.
And then she says to me, I think I'm going to start doing this with all my 20-year-olds, because now I can see whether they see me or not, but they have this baseline when they're 20. And so when they're 40, they can look back and say, hey, this is where I was. And now we're having some of those metrics.
So as we wrap up, how does this happen? I want everyone, as they listen to this and going into Thanksgiving and the holidays, and have some conversations. We're not telling anyone to do anything, but have conversations. Everyone you should meet should know what their numbers are that aren't even blood tests. What is your breaths per minute? What's your resting heart rate? What's your resting blood pressure? The sooner you know those things, now you have more awareness.
How many hours of sleep do you get?
How many hours of sleep do you get?
How much water do you drink?
Can you hang from a bar? Yeah.
Simple stuff.
Can you blow up a balloon? These are the
Maybe
things.
that's what you're doing over the holidays.
I went over to my longest buddy's house, and him and his wife were talking about this book they read and grip strength and pull-ups. And we've talked about the monkey bars. There's monkey bars up north where you go up, over, and then down. They're very challenging. I'm still proud that I can do those, but at what point did I not? Because at one point I could do those with my eyes shut. Well, when does that stop? Usually probably when we do stop. But the biggest takeaway that hit me, 89% of 50-year-olds are medicated. The average 18-year-old fills close to 12 prescriptions a year. Now, they're usually the same prescription, but multiple times a year. 4 out of 10 are taking 5+ over 50. 2 out of 10 are taking 10+. Not to mention overdoing supplements, over-the-counter medications. And so the takeaway is, how does this happen? This happens when we start to worry more about the symptoms than the source of the problem. Everything we talked about today is a symptom. It's not the source of the problem. Your cholesterol is not the source of the problem for heart disease. Your blood pressure is not because you're consuming too much salt. It's because you're not balanced in your nervous system. So the takeaway today is, I think, tap into yourself. How does this happen? And if you want to have something different, I think you got 2 people here that have seen tremendous transformation. If you're willing, if you're able, but you have to get in the game because nobody else will do this for
Yeah, you
you.
have to decide. It's a decision, and then you become more intentional.
So as we leave you here, leading you into the Thanksgiving holidays, again, check out our sale, our November sale. And I want to hear from you. So if you have any case studies, any stories, any questions that you have, any specific things that kind of still don't understand, we're here to help. We'll see you again next time.